Good day, everyone. It's good to be back here with you today. And Julie and I are going to talk to you today about performance assessments. And the reason for this is we are nearing the end of this school year and of this current online learning for this year. And so now we are at a point of how do we assess our students to ensure that what we've been doing, that they've been learning and improving. And one of the best ways to do that is through performance assessment. And today, what we're going to do is focus in on the formative side of performance assessment. And in the next webinar, we'll talk about the summative aspect. So I kind of want you to think about, we've asked our students to kind of go after what we've identified as these big rocks. And so now that we're at the end of the year, we want our students to kind of go out and gather up, sort and organize these big rocks, and then put them into a single basket. So think of that formative as the gathering and sorting aspect, and then putting in the basket as being that summative aspect. And this will all make sense as we proceed forward. As we talk today to you about these performance assessments and the formative manner, I want you to think about three main things as we go through this. First of all, when we are doing these performance assessments or these tasks, which will later make sense, we need to ask ourselves, does the task engage the students in these important skills and concepts that they're required to do? We want to ensure that what they are doing, that they are showing evidence that they can meet these outcomes. Second, is it authentic and open-ended? And does it offer our students these multiple entry points at a variety of levels in order to do these variety of tasks? And then third, are the tasks directly connected to the criteria that we've identified? We talked about this before when we talked about descriptive feedback. If we don't have that criteria laid out first, that end in mind, then the descriptive feedback that we are giving the students kind of falls short. It's great feedback, but they're not making those connections. And so it's the same thing with our performance assessment here. We want to make sure that the tasks that we create, they are strictly connected to the criteria that we've identified. What do performance assessments or these tasks do for our students? Well, one, they're going to help our students to remain focused on their learning. And the reason for that is because it's not just textbook scenario anymore. It is very real world, hands-on. They are engaged, and so they tend to remain focused in on that learning. Second, these performance assessments allows our students to demonstrate their skills, not to just write it out or speak it out, but now they can show, they can demonstrate it. And third, they become very actively involved in their learning. They are what we would call active participants. And that's a huge bonus to assessments. I want you to focus in on just what I've highlighted in red here on this screen. I've put all the other text so it's something for you to refer to later on, but it's the red that I want us to focus in on. Let's first identify what a performance assessment is. Let's forget the formative aspect for now. Just what is this performance assessment? First of all, when we do a performance assessment, will the task allow our students to provide the opportunity to demonstrate their learning? We want to ensure that the task that they're doing gives them that opportunity to demonstrate what they know. Now remember, we mentioned this before, how they present that information to us, we shouldn't always be caught up on that because the mode of presentation isn't important. Now, however, sometimes we want all of our students to present something in the same manner because that was part of the learning outcome, that they have to be able to present a specific way. But if that isn't part of the learning outcome, how they're presenting, it could be in a variety of ways. So we can give them that choice on that. Second, are students clear on what excellence looks like? Have we shown them, hey, this is what a standard of excellence looks like? We need to make sure that they understand that and that they are shooting for that. Three, does the task allow these students to have multiple entry points for everyone in your class? Can they enter in at different places? In other words, if there's a series of tasks to do, what I choose to do first may be different than what you choose to do first, but it shouldn't matter. Right? There doesn't necessarily have to be a sequential order of doing things. There could be a multiple entry points for these tasks taking place. Next, is there choice? Have we allowed our students the opportunity to choose how they're going to go ahead and do that? What we're looking for is that they can obtain that specific learner outcome. How they get there, How they choose to demonstrate it, have I given them that opportunity? Again, sometimes we need to narrow that down, but other times that choice could be wide open, and we should allow that flexibility. And 5, the open-ended nature of the performance task requires a level of independence and risk-taking. Now, we know that as soon as we kind of loosen up the reins a little bit, some of our students struggle. They just keep coming to us saying, what do I do? What do I do next? What do I do next? Am I on the right track? And so we just have to be patient with them, saying, you know what to do here, and just kind of encourage them and go along with it. And again, patient with ourselves, and also reminding the parents that it's okay, let them struggle a little bit here. They will figure it out. I mean, I'm not going to let them drown, but we're going to let them try to find their way through that process.
As Colin has just eloquently said, performance tasks can be flexible. They can have multiple entry points. They can be done in different chronological orders. They can have a multitude of tasks or few tasks. That can seem daunting to some of us when we're planning, and daunting to some of our students. So Colin has already shared all of the essentials. I'd like to share some considerations. The Alberta Assessment Consortium definitely directs us towards the RAFTS format. These are all interconnected, but let's just talk a little bit about role. Putting our students in a role, having them think about what it's like to actually use the information, the skills, the knowledge that you've taught them for a purpose in their lives can be incredibly engaging. Now, I know a lot of our older students don't want to play Imagine If, but we can do something like this. Have them just think about what it's like to be a city planner. Think about what it's like to be a person who manages a pet daycare. This really shows them how all the great things we've taught them to know and do applies. Also, we can have them think about roles that are applicable to them in their daily lives. They're important members of their families. They can be part of liturgical planning teams. Regardless of what role you choose, having students think about a role really helps to pull all of the components of a performance task together for a purpose. So on the notion of purpose, let's look at strong verb. Later, you'll see Colin talk about the umbrella that overarches a performance task, that ties all of the tasks together. Having a real life applicable purpose increases the authenticity of a performance task. So are our students trying to, as city engineers, persuade a group to? Are they trying to, as YouTube bloggers or just YouTubers, are they trying to evaluate it? The possibilities are infinite, but it really gives our students an understanding of how these tasks work together. Let's talk a little bit about planning. Whose job is it? Well, obviously it's our job to plan the bulk of a performance task. But once our students have all the information that we've given them, the exemplars, the how to do it, the what's expected, let's stretch ourselves a little to consider what it would be like if we involved our students in the planning. How about having our students make some plans and submit them to us for our feedback so that they have more ownership of it? First of all, it gives us as teachers a chance to catch the child who's a little bit off track and pull them back in and say, here's how what you're doing can work to achieve this overall purpose. You'll still be in the role, you'll still be meeting your strong verb. But we know that learners of all ages, adults to our youngest learners, are more likely to commit to their plan if they have put it in a verbal form or a written form. And it makes it less about us and more about the students actually applying what they know. Ultimately, that's what we want, is for our students to be able to show us that what we've taught them is useful to them.
Let's look at these performance assessments in the formative aspect. So first of all, as we talked about before with descriptive feedback, when we go through the formative, we allow our students to, one, practice. So they're forever practicing learning that skill. We give them feedback, very descriptive feedback on the criteria that we've laid out. We give them the opportunity to improve, to make those adjustments before we assign any work. Because remember, that feedback that we are giving our students is a checkup. It's not an autopsy. right? So we want them to be able to have the opportunity to improve. Same thing here with these performance assessments, and it lays it out beautifully in that formative manner. Second, providing time for students to review those exemplars. What does that standard of excellence look like? They should be able to go back to that and look at that. Okay, this is what it should look like. And then allowing them to self-reflect, and by receiving descriptive feedback from ourselves as well, to make those adjustments and to progress further. And also for them to be able to set goals and directions for themselves on what do I need to do to change things up here to meet that learner outcome in that standard of excellence. And please remember, if our focus is on feedback, descriptive feedback that we talked about before, then all assessments are formative until students get it. When results show that they get it, then that assessment becomes summative. And that's the part that we will talk about the next time. But right now, we're just focused in on these performance tasks and in the formative manner. Now, got this umbrella here in this graphic. So when we talk about these performance assessments, I want you to think about a series of tasks that the students are doing to reach that end goal. We always have an end goal in mind. We talked about that with the descriptive feedback, right? What is that end goal? What is the ultimate? What is that learner outcome, the criteria? We need to know that. So then there's all these individual tasks. Now, here's what's important. After each task that the student is doing here at the end of the year, this performance assessment that you're doing, we need to give them that formative assessment. We need to give them that descriptive feedback. We need to give them the opportunity to adjust things. So for example, if I was doing a performance assessment and having my students bake chocolate chip cookies, it wouldn't be reasonable for me to just hand out the recipe and say to them, okay, now go ahead and I'll check back in on you when the cookies are made. And then when the cookies are done, first of all, they're pulling them out of the microwave oven rather than the oven, and they don't look anything like chocolate chip cookies. It would have been much better to have this broken up into tasks. And after every task, they check in with the teacher. So for example, very first task could be, here's the recipe. Now, what you need to do is you need to go ahead and figure out all of the tools that you need. So they go ahead and they grab all the pots and the utensils and the measuring cups and so forth. At the end of that task, that's where we meet with them, we have the conversation with them, and I just provide descriptive feedback. So they might have a spoon there, and I can ask them, hey, what's a spoon for? They say, well, that's what I'm going to stir everything up. I say, well, that's great. That's good. That's a spoon. Now, how does that work? Like, how does everything mix up when I use this spoon? And they would describe that to you. And then you could question them with your guiding questions and ask them, is there anything else other than a spoon that I could use that would help break things up? And they might recognize maybe a fork. And then you say, okay, why a fork? Then they would say, well, it's separated. It'll help break things up as I stir it. Great. So we could use a fork. So maybe let's do that. Or is there anything else? And they might then identify a whisk. So you're giving them that feedback after that task. There's no sense waiting till the very end and then the end product. It's terrible, right? That's that kind of that summative part, and yet they fail the whole thing, but there was no checkup along the way. So we have to remember at the end of every task, there is a formative assessment that is occurring after every single task as we go ahead through this performance assessment.
Well, it's not instruction as normal, and it's not assessment as normal. Don't we know it? But one of the keys to using performance assessments with our students, because they are so flexible and so diverse, is definitely going to be collaboration. Key ingredient here, working together to create a performance assessment, but then working together through the process and at the end to talk about the evidence that we have from students so we can use it formatively to help our students move forward. Remember, formative assessment, as we've said in previous webinars, is as much for us as it is for our students. So coming together to share those ideas, to think about the different components that could be available, to think about the flexible timelines, to respond to students who are giving us plans that are right on or plans that are a little divergent, the collaboration there is going to be key. An excellent resource that we have that our district is involved in is the Alberta Assessment Consortium. I highly recommend, as does our entire coaching team, that you check out the Alberta Assessment Consortium and see what's available. So, in case you didn't know or don't remember, we have a membership to the Alberta Assessment Consortium. If you are not sure how to log on, please contact any of the coaches or your administration, or ask the teacher who normally teaches next door to you. When you get onto the Alberta Assessment Consortium, I'd just like to point out that performance tasks right here, when we click on Browse Tasks, there are over 239 available by grade and by subject. As well, when you click on Classroom Materials, slide over here, it says Create Your Own Performance Task. There are several resources that you can use to create your own, including the 5 short videos, but I highly recommend downloading this assessment guide. It'll help you go through planning. And of course, any of your colleagues, I'm sure, and the coaches are here to help you along that way. Let's use the resources that are available to us so that we are not reinventing the wheel, rather applying our ingenuity to it.
So like Julie was talking about there, with collaboration, how important that is as you get together with your collaborative groups, and also referring to the AAC website. There's no sense reinventing that wheel, right? So going back to these guiding questions, when you get together with your collaborative group and you decide, hey, let's do this performance assessment, let's assess our students for our year-end assessment to see what our students were able to accomplish throughout the year, and also since March 15th, what have they been able to accomplish? The performance assessment lends itself beautifully to that. So when you meet with your collaborative group, you go through these guiding questions. Ask yourself, okay, now here's all our tasks. Will it engage our students in those specific concepts and skills that we want them to be able to do? Or have we created something great, but we're kind of gone down that rabbit hole and it's not really looking at anything that we want to focus in on? Second, is there multiple entry points? Can all of my students enter in on this performance assessment? And then third, those tasks that we come up with in our collaborative group, are they connected to the criteria that we've laid out with our students? Now, you're going to be with your collaborative group in doing this. You've got the AAC website to help guide you along, and they've got some great performance assessments on there that you can use and modify for yourself. So what we are proposing is, rather than a Q&A at the end of this webinar, we are inviting you as a collaborative group that reach out to us coaches and say, hey, we could use the coaches here. We'll roll up our sleeves and we'll do this with you. So we ask that you please invite us into your collaborative groups, and we'll help you out through this process of coming up with a performance assessment for the year-end aspect, because we are just weeks away now from assessing our students to see what they've been able to do. And if at any point in time, any of you have any questions, always please remember to never hesitate to reach out to any of us coaches, and that's what we're here for. All right, so the next webinar will be on the performance assessment in the summative manner. Have a wonderful day.